A packed house full of terminal operators, shippers, and virtually everyone involved in international trade in Long Beach gathered recently at the Queen Mary. The occasion was a luncheon hosted by the Long Beach Chamber of Commerce's International Business Association to hear Port of Long Beach Executive Director Dick Steinke give his yearly State of the Port speech. This year, the scorecard didn't simply showcase economic growth and tally how many more containers the port handled in the past 12 months. Instead, his presentation also focused on the port's new Green Port policy and how in just a single year it had permeated so deeply into the culture at the port that nearly every decision must be evaluated using what Mr. Steinke called the triple bottom line.
When we look at a project, we want to make sure that it's economic, that it promotes port trade. We also have to make sure that it's environmentally accountable, that it benefits the environment and that it's ecologically sound, and that it has a social responsibility, that what we create in the future is not going to be detrimental to generations ahead of us.
Most of the solutions to be implemented at the port will require the participation and capital investment from terminal and shipping line operators who will have to join the call for a cleaner environment by using shoreside electricity to cold iron ships and alternative fuels for on-dock equipment. One Green Port policy initiative that is already in full swing is reducing one of the most visible port pollution problems: trucks on the 710 and other area highways.
Pier Pass had a lot to do with shifting a lot of the traffic from the daytime hours to the nighttime, and I think that allowed for a great deal of fluidity within the terminals and our infrastructure system here at the Port of Long Beach.
The Pier Pass program, started last year, requires companies to pay an extra fee to have their trucks pick up containers during busy commuter periods, 3 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. There is no extra fee during off-peak periods at night and on Saturdays. About 34% of the trucks at the port are now using Pier Pass's off-peak truck gates. This puts trucks on freeways later at night and on Saturday, cutting down on the gridlock that left trucks idling on and near the heavily congested 710 freeway. Mr. Steinke also spoke of another new program on the boards to create more on-dock rail capacity to get containers directly onto trains at the port and a virtual container terminal to exchange empty containers outside the port, all to further reduce truck traffic.
It's a computer-based system whereby an empty container would be exchanged outside of the harbor. Say a container goes to JCPenney Distribution Center in Ontario or Cerritos or wherever it is, it would be exchanged with somebody who wants that empty container to load hay or scrap or something else like that, and that empty container wouldn't have to come down to the harbor, use the freeways, not make all those redundant trips back to the control point, which is currently the container terminal. So that's one of the things that we're encouraged about.
And while the Green Port policy was at the forefront of his presentation, Mr. Steinke also addressed our need for a safe and secure port.
Every single truck that exits a terminal goes through a radiation portal monitor. It's like a magnetometer at an airport. If something is in that container which monitors a closer inspection, the truck is pulled to the side. U.S. Customs agents are there in the terminals. They'll take a closer look and determine the manifest and determine whether or not it's a container of interest, and they'll look closer at it.
To close his comments, he spoke directly to the need for every one of us, whether we live near the port or inland, to recognize our vital connection to international trade.
But it's not tough to make a connection between how your life is impacted by international trade and globalization by asking just a couple of simple questions. When we teach young kids in the elementary schools, you can ask a couple questions to them, and all it takes is, how many people have eaten a banana, and just about every kid has eaten a banana. And you say, well, bananas don't grow in the United States, so how did they get here? Pretty soon you got a ship, and pretty soon you've got the connection.
Mr. Steinke's speech was well received, and his message was certainly clear. While the port is handling 41% more cargo than it did 2 years ago, it's doing so while reducing air pollution, which is certainly good news for all of us in Southern California.